Hello class. In this video we're going to look at doing glass in Illustrator, and actually there's lots of different ways of doing this. We're going to learn the gradient tool because it's a fun tool, a good tool to learn, and a few things here. There are several steps along the way to use gradient and you use it properly for this rendering. There's a couple little details that you have to get the steps right, so pay attention as we go through it. First thing I'm going to do, as always, is make a new layer, and I'm going to put it sort of right above my roof layer, right under the CAD layer, and call it glass. Now, the first thing we have to do is think about the color, what color glass is, and I always say this, of course, glass is clear in the real world, but that's not a color. So then you have to start to think what it is. Usually during a daytime image, what glass is doing from windows is actually reflecting the outside world. Now we're not going to get into whole rendering the scene in this particular rendering, but we're going to simplify it and say, you know what is almost always there that glass could be rendering is sky. So we're going to sort of make like it's reflecting a sky. Okay, so to do that, we know skies are blue, and I'm going to start with a blue color, but again, there is some detail here because first I need to get the glass, just the objects down themselves. So I'm just going to pick a blue that's not the same as my house so I can see it. In fact, the color doesn't completely matter because it will be worked on in several steps moving forward here. But I'm going to pick a blue, I'm going to use my pen tool, and I do have to just trace around all the places I have glass, and this is going to take me a few steps, but just click, click, click around. I might sort of pause the video because you don't need to see me doing all of this, but just a couple here, you just go and you click and you click. And if your trim is a different color than white, it's hard to tell because I made mine white because I like trim to be white. Um, but if yours is a different color, you notice you're covering over the color, and what's left is just the trim as it should be. So it's going to look good. You come up there, click all the way around, and click around. So we just have to do this for all the windows. Why don't I pause the video and come back once I finish this window, and you can see just the base color. And we'll move on to the next cool steps of making windows. Okay, so I've got my windows all filled in blue. What, of course, no sky, if that's what we're pretending here, is perfectly consistent blue. And so to make it sort of go like a real sky, which tends to be deeper blue at the top and more towards white towards the bottom, we need to use what's called a gradient. And there is several steps needed to make a gradient work. So the first thing I'm going to do is you can select all your windows like this by clicking, or you can select one. It really doesn't matter. But anyway, you're going to select something, right? And then you're going to hit the gradient button, which is right here. Now, by default, Illustrator likes to set all your gradients to black and white. So the fact that we made it blue doesn't matter. It's going to look like this. That's fine. We can reset the color. And you're going to reset the color, your gradient is going to pop out. Now, if your gradient isn't over here, if it doesn't pop out, again, remember, go Windows Gradient, and it will come up for you then. And you'll get this bar, and basically you can see for each object it's going from one color to the other color. So the first thing to do is to set our colors two different blues. And so just double click on one side. Now it's going to default to black and white. So if that's the case, click this little button here, and I'm actually going to go to HSB. I'm going to actually have the saturation go up, have the lightness go up so I can see the color. And then I'm going to, turn this to sort of a blue-ish color. It's actually more towards green than it is towards purple. Can make this lighter, maybe a little less saturated. Get a blue color that you like. Again, we can always go back and adjust it. So I'm going to go with this color. And then the white, I want to be I don't want it to be pure white either. So I'm going to click on this button again, go to HSB, and I'm going to make it a light blue. In fact, I'm going to also just tweak it even more towards green for the bottom, just a little bit towards green, just to give some definition. And actually, there's actually a lot of green in sky, believe it or not. So a nice light color somewhere around there. Again, I can always go back and adjust it as needed. Now, the other thing we need to do, to do a gradient, is we have to put the gradient in the direction we want it to be. And by default, we have this left to right, but we know the sky gradient goes top to bottom. And so to do that, you go to this gradient tool right here. I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to click somewhere in the bottom of my screen and pull up. And you can see now I've got this gradient across my windows that's a richer blue at the top and a lighter blue at the bottom, and it's the way it wants to look. Now I'm going to review a few things here because your drawings might not look the same as mine, and I'm going to tell you how to fix them. One is, what happens if you have the light blue at top and the dark blue at the bottom when you did that? Not a problem. You could switch these around. You could also hit that button right there and it switches the gradient back and forth. Alternatively, you could draw the line the other way. So that is good. Now what happens, sometimes you might actually have an individual gradient over each thing. I want you to make sure that your gradient is across the building, not the individual window. Okay, and so what I mean by that is, let's see, if I do a gradient just across individually like this. You do not do this. This is not what you want to do. I'm just breaking my windows. Oops. There we go. So here, see how I've got gradients over each little window pane independently? I don't want to do that. So if that happens, again, just select all your windows entirely, use the gradient tool and pull it up, right? So that's how you have to have them all selected and then use this tool to make it work. So in review, that gradient is 3 tools. It's first set this gradient, which looks like this symbol. Then it's adjust things over in this gradient, which is the same symbol over in here. And then the third thing is to set the line in the direction, which is this gradient tool here, which is the same symbol. So 3 symbols are the same. You have to do it in that order. If you somehow messed up, go back and watch this video again. If you follow, you will get the steps correctly. Okay, so now let's do something fun here to continue with our windows. These windows are pretty good, but we can also add a little bit of sort of some interesting things into it and show you some things with gradient and some other moves. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy these windows. I'm gonna lock. I'm gonna copy. That means I'm just sort of thinking in my feet. I'm just gonna copy this plane. I think that's the only plane I need to copy is this front window plane here. I'm gonna Control C and copy it. I'm gonna lock this layer. I'm gonna make a new layer, and I'm gonna call it reflection. Okay, so to do reflections, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just do like angled lines that are white. So what I'm going to do is actually, in this case, I'm going to turn my fill to nothing, and I'm going to take my stroke and turn it to white. All right, and I'm going to draw a line. If I hold Shift, or maybe just approximately 45, I'm going to make sure I get some windows in it here. All right, and so I want to draw it bigger. I'm going to take care of where it should be just over the windows in a step or two from now. But one of the things I want to do is I want to make this bigger. So I'm going to come here and go to my stroke and change the width to something probably pretty big. And you might even make it bigger than you think, because then I want it to be a little fuzzy too. So I'm going to go to Effects. I'm going to go, I'll go Stylize Feather, and we'll just see what 0.05 does. I can do even more probably. Let's try 0.08. Hitting the preview. There we go. That looks pretty good. Just like that. And if I still think it's too bright, I can take the transparency down a bit. The opacity will go down. Again, if you don't see transparency over here on your right-hand side, just go to Window, Transparencies, and it'll come up. And so I want to add a few more of these, and I can have different spacing, and I can have different widths. So maybe I'll pull one down here and make it a pretty, big width, just like that. Maybe I'll take this one. Oh, by the way, to copy it, I'm using my black arrow, going over the line and pressing Alt on my keyboard. That allows me to copy an object. Maybe I'll make this one a little smaller, even, just like that, and pull it in tight. And maybe I'll do one on the bottom just like that and pull it in tight. Let's get one over in this set of windows over here. Again, maybe just change the size a bit to be interesting like that. And so these are going to be sort of the reflections for my windows. I like it sometimes when, say, a reflection here hits up here, but also appears over there. So I might just shift that one down a little bit, just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I only see this over the window. So to do that, I'm going to use a clipping mask. All right, so this is going to be a few steps here. Just stay with me. You can get it and have something interesting. Temporarily, I'm going to lock my reflections layer. What I'm going to do is unlock my glass layer, and I'm going to select everything and just do Control C to copy it, okay? Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to lock the glass layer, unlock the reflection layer, and now to make the layer all work as one, this is a bit tricky, I'm going to hit this little circle button over here, okay? You don't have to use this to do layer mask, but to do this all at once, I'm treating the whole layer as one object when I hit that button, okay? So now I'm going to go to my transparencies, which is here, and I'm going to go to make mask. And you can see it brings up this black box, which I want to click on right here, okay? I'm going to for now, I'm going to undo clip so we can see what's happening. What I'm going to do is when I have this box selected, I'm going to do edit, paste in front, or Control F to paste the windows in. And we can see they're right here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change their fill to be a solid fill, and I'm going to change them to black, all to black, okay? And so we can see what it's done is it's remove them from my window. So what I want to do is I want to invert mask and clip. And now we can see I only have the streaks at the windows, which is a great little object right there. And I got this reflections over the glass, sort of a very graphic style of doing that. But it's a cool little thing. Teaches us how to use layer mask. Oh, I should mention to end layer mask, you have to click back on this box to get back to your regular layer. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to lock my reflections and sort of, I know doing the gradient was a bit tricky. I know the clipping mask was a bit tricky as well, but if you follow those steps and try, you will get it. You can always ask me in person if you're struggling. So good luck with that. Otherwise, we finished pretty much rendering the house for now. We'll want to make edits as we go along. But we do have a few more things we want to do with some background and adding some elements before we start tweaking things. So I'll see you in those videos.